Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining. Today is our very first session on food safety. So, Theodore, I guess you can introduce yourself, tell everyone who you are and what the course is about.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everybody's doing okay. I know this group is not shy. I listen in on your calls. I've been calling in, so I know I'm in for an interactive engagement. As Linnell said, my name is Theodora Morel Hines. I am originally from St. Lucia in the Caribbean, in the West Indies, but I reside in the US right now. I am a retired executive, a past vice president of the Kellogg company, the cereal company, but they make more than cereal. They make from soup to nuts. Did you know Kellogg makes waffle? The Eggo waffle. So, and we have companies around the world from India to Australia to Africa. And my responsibility in that role was to manage their quality and food safety programs, their policies, their procedures, interact with regulatory bodies. So I was key in helping Kellogg and the government develop the food safety program, FSMA, the Modern Act. I will talk a little bit about that. And so I've seen it from soup to nuts. And one of the things that I always wanted to do is to represent and enable the Caribbean to be a little more engaged in the food safety programs. What we find is most of the time when we are doing food safety policies in the Caribbean and in Africa for that matter, there's no representation at the table. So you are left with dealing with what the developing countries put in place. And most of the time, it's really, really difficult for developed countries to follow because we don't have the tools, we don't have the technology. Yes? Was somebody trying to say something? Okay. So what I wanted to do is come back with working with Helen's daughters. We are going to go through and do some food safety awareness. I don't call it training because we don't have enough time to train, but we have time to do an awareness. And what you will see throughout the course is the food safety will tie into all of the different sections that you are going to learn while you are doing this workshop. So food safety in the Caribbean, I know it's a myth. It's not where it should be. It's not as much as I'd like to see it. So, but hopefully with this, we can start one step at a time to develop the skill sets. So that's me in a nutshell. And I'm looking forward for our 2 sessions. It's 2 hours today and 2 hours tomorrow. But that's just an intro, and then you have access to me just by being part of the class for as long as you want. So I'll keep my video on for an intro, and I will turn it off and focus on the presentation. So I'm not always looking at myself or be conscious of whether I'm touching my hair or doing anything else. I'm hyperactive, I can't sit still, so I'm always jittery. So I hope you guys are ready for me. You're ready to do food safety and look at food from a whole different perspective. I'm excited. I hope you are too. Let me hear hoo-hoo.
Yeah, hoo-hoo.
All right, Lynette. Any questions for me before we start? Any expectations? So I know you've been doing the 2 people to recap, and we can continue that, but what I'd like for us to do is do it in a format of a skit. So I'd like for you guys to get 2 people. I'm gonna give you a case scenario and to help me solve a foodborne outbreak. After the end of the day, you'll be able to tell me what food How did the person get sick? When and what? So if I get 2 people that will volunteer to, one to be the inspector and the other person to be the employee or the person who got sick. We'll do a little bit more about it, but do I have 2 volunteers? So it's a different way to recap the program. And we'll have different activities during the course of the session. Oh, one more thing. The thing about me is I don't like to hear myself talk. And so I'm hoping that you guys are going to interact. If you have questions, use the chat, raise your hand. It's not about just me hearing myself. It's not a lecture. Okay? All right, Danielle, with that, if there's no other question, we can get started.
Yes, so everything is loading on my end. Not sure if you want to begin and I will catch up with you.
All right, let me see if I can get my screen share. How do I share screen? You guys can see my screen?
Oh, yes, we can.
All right, we can do it from there then. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Yes, I can see it.
All right, so let me see if I know how to turn off. All right, guys. I'm gonna turn my video off so you don't see my pretty face. And then we'll start. So let's see. I wasn't. One second, guys. Danielle, I don't think I can move this. Am I doing something?
Oh, you can change your slides by just
Oh, there we go.
pressing the screen.
Yeah, that's what I was doing, but it wasn't going. All right, so Lynette, you're gonna have to look for questions and chat for me because I might not be able to see it as clearly.
No problem.
Yes, please. All right. So what we're gonna do, I did the introduction. We'll go through food safety culture. We're gonna go through the basic principles of food safety, foodborne illness and microorganisms, kitchen and personal hygiene. And then in between, we'll do a food safety jeopardy. Was there a question? Okay. So you've got, how many people have seen the game Jeopardy on TV, right? So it goes like this. I'm gonna give you a few categories based on the training. You're gonna pick a category and then I'm gonna give you the answer and you're gonna give me the question in the form of what is. Understood? Okay. So I'm gonna take silence that it's not against me, that you guys are just all into it.
Okay.
All right, I'm having difficulty moving this slide. I was not, oh, there we go. Let me see. All right, so your learning objectives are food safety culture and its role in producing food. So you're gonna be able to learn about what's food safety culture, which you already know, but you're just gonna repeat it. You're gonna learn about the main food safety hazards. You're gonna learn about microorganisms and the foodborne pathogens. You're gonna learn why kitchen and personal hygiene is a precursor to farm food safety culture and its role in producing safe food. And then how to use the tools in your kitchen to prevent foodborne illness. So here is a clue for you. Your first thing to work. So who can be the first to unlock this phrase? So I need your help to unlock this phrase. And if you need a clue, if there's somebody can do it first, you can put your hands up once you have it. in the chat or in the chat, or you can use the hands up feature. So you'll have 2 minutes because it's pretty easy to solve. So you guys want to start?
I'm
I can't
taking
see
the
you, so you have to-
silence as a yes.
Yes. It's a phrase. If you need a clue, tell me and I'll give you a clue.
Need a clue. Give us a clue.
Okay. Use the alphabet. Does that help?
Yeah, sure.
Use the numerical version of the alphabet. The first person to get it, Lynette will give you a prize, a t-shirt. Anybody close?
I'm not close. I got the first line.
That's close.
I think I have it.
All right, who's that?
Roxanne. Safe food start with the farmer.
Yay!
Good job. I only got safe food. You good.
Job. So Lynette, can you record that we get a Roxanne, right?
Yes, we have so many Roxannes in our class.
Roxanne, which Roxanne?
Hamilton.
Great job. And you did it fast too. So that was just a little bit of a way to get us started. But do you agree, you guys as farmers, whether you agro-processing or doing primary producer, we deal with food. And food is one of the things that all of us need, no matter how rich, how poor, where we are, food is a staple for survival. And the food starts with you, the farmer. So it's your responsibility, a big responsibility, but the food that you make for your family, for others, you are responsible to do your part to make sure that you are providing this food that is safe from both microbial, physical, or chemical hazards to our consumers. And think of yourself as a consumer and what you want when you buy food, right? So food safety culture. How many people have heard of food safety culture? Indicate either by a hand raise or a chat or something. Or you can talk, just tell me, anybody else? Food safety culture and what it is?
I haven't heard it before.
And all right, so let's do this. So, and you can take your mic off your mute. Like I said, this is going to be interactive. Name some of the cultures in your region. When you talk about culture, right? Just don't take out the food and think of culture. What do you think it's a culture of SVK? Or the Caribbean? What would you say is a culture that's belonging? It's our culture. Any ideas?
Washing.
Like hard food and stuff.
Washing food.
Culture
you
norms,
use them.
yes.
Washing food before you use them.
Washing, is that a culture of the Caribbean? Is that something we all do?
It's carnival.
It's carnival, right? What else?
Hospitality.
Hospitality, yes.
We
Oh, I
season
thought you were
meat.
talking related to food.
We season our food, I heard, but what's the other one? We season food. I heard somebody else say something. Hello, you guys still there?
Is it the way we prepare our foods?
Yeah. So this is culture. They're the norms. They're the things we do. So for example, this is not helping.
And we also can our food, like using salt to can them.
Yeah. So those are all great answers. So for example, Carnival is some of the culture that we have in the Caribbean, no matter where we are. Carnival is big for us. We play the pan, still pan, and we're good at it. We are a fishing village in most of us cases. We fish. And our culture is when we go education and uniforms, right? When you go to the other places, not everybody wears uniform in school. And that's one of our great cultures, to see everybody in uniform, so you don't have to worry about all this other thing that goes with not wearing uniforms. We are a Christian nation, whether it be Catholic, whatever it is, Baptist, we are all Christians. And then we love our beaches. So what do all of those have in common? So when you think about culture, what do you think? What makes it stick? What makes it a culture? What makes it a norm?
Most people in the region practice it.
Most people in the region practice it.
So that makes it a culture, because like in St. Vincent, we do certain things, most people.
Right. It's ingrained in us. So being in America and eating American food, when I first came to America, my mother almost sent me back because the food was so tasteless. We in the Caribbean, we season our food, right? It's nice and seasoned. So that's a culture. That's something we just do. So food safety culture is not any different. It's about, it goes beyond the policies and the scientific knowledge. So when you think about food safety, don't think about it, oh, it's all policies or standard, it's scary. It's about behavior and mindset. And like somebody said, it's about when you wash your food, you cook your food, you wash your food, it's clean, that your behavior is there no matter who's watching, right? We do the right things just because. Like if some food fall on the floor, I know they have the 5-second rules. Don't believe in the 5-second rules. If the food fall on the ground, it's dirty. You think about what's on the ground, or especially on the streets, when you walk on the floor, you're taking all kinds of germs that's in there. So it doesn't take 5 seconds. The minute it touches it, the bacteria can stay on there. So a food safety culture is important. It's about everybody believing in it, but not just believing in it, but saying that's part of how I'm gonna grow food. Whether I'm doing the food for me and my family, whether I'm gonna sell it to the supermarket, whether I'm gonna import it, whether I'm gonna export it, I am making food. And my first job when I make food is to do no harm, whether it's my family or my consumers. So here's another little test. Which statement does not reflect a food safety culture? And you can add it in the chat for me, or you can say it, whichever one. And Galaxy 820 don't have a name. It says, what's expected society as a culture? That's good. Sports norms. I'm just reading some of the feedback. So can you guys, which statement does not reflect a food safety culture? All employees and owners are trained on food safety. All employees wash hands after using the bathroom. Hand washing is not necessary on the farm because we are always handling dirt. Raw manure is not used during harvesting.
Oh, we have some answers in the chat. Some people said C, 2 people said D.
D, yeah.
People
C,
said
D.
C and D. It's between C and D in the chat.
C and D, yeah. Okay, so C, D, C, D. The correct answer is C. Now, D is very tricky, and we'll go through why D is not correct. Raw manure is not used during harvesting. Remember that as we go through, I'll tell you why. Thank you. So it's D, hand washing is not necessary on the farm because we are always handling that. Hand washing is key. We must always keep our hands clean when we're handling food, especially ready to eat food. And when I talk about ready to eat food, I mean vegetables and produce and fruits that you are not going to wash before eating. So it's gonna be eaten basically raw. Thanks, everyone. Danielle, are you ready? Because I'm getting stuck with mine. Let me see. Every time I talk about it. There we go. All right, so what is food safety? Food safety is, in very simple terms, handling, preparing, and storing food. So the proper handling, proper preparation, and proper storage of food. So it sounds simple. So if that's so easy, why do we have so much problems? Now, as we go through this first section that we are going to do today, we're going to talk mostly about your personal hygiene and at-home hygiene and how you manage your food at home, because food safety starts at home. And then next day, we're going to talk about how to translate that on the farm or in your
I'm actually ready now, Theo, if you need me. I'm sorry about that. There was a
It's
lot
okay.
of
Let me see
noise.
Yeah, let's see if it's going. But what you can do to help me is monitor the chat. Unfortunately, I'm using my phone to log and can't change it right away. Let me
Oh,
see.
okay. No problem.
Okay, I'm here now. Hi, Lenisa. So if you can monitor the chat, Lenel, that'd be great.
No problem.
And tell me when I get stuck again. I don't know why I'm getting stuck. Maybe you should take over because it's wasting time. So what do I do? Stop sharing and you'll take over?
Okay, no problem. Yes.
Because it's not going. I'm gonna stop sharing. Do you have it?
Yes, about to share mine right now.
Okay. All the way to the top, yeah. Okay, so we can go down to slide, go down some more, one other one,
Okay.
one more. Keep going, we covered that one already. No, keep going.
Okay. Here.
No, keep going. We did this one. Yeah. So there are four steps to food safety. We said it was about clean, separate, and handle. So when you talk about food safety, think about it as clean, separate, cook, chill. So you have to clean it, you have to keep it separate, you have to cook it, and you have to chill it. We'll go through each one and talk about them as we go. Panel?
We're current for. That is not the paper. Where is the first
Oh,
paper that was ever
someone's
to the
mic is unmuted.
Bring it, let me see.
My.
All right, so food safety hazards. So when we talk about food safety, we talk about food safety and the hazards. And when you talk about food safety, there's three major hazards. There's biological, next one, Linnell. Physical and chemical. Physical and chemical. Right, so those are the hazards that's gonna create a foodborne illness. Now, under the physical one, you see a cherry. So why is cherry, can anybody tell me why cherry could be a physical hazard? Anyone? There's no
Because
wrong
of
answer.
seeds.
Because of what?
The seeds.
Because of the seeds, yes. Because the seeds, even though it's natural part of the cherry, the seed can be a physical hazard because it can cause damage to your teeth, or it might even be a choking hazard. Very good. And then the chemical goes without saying. You can have physical chemical hazards. If you have too much chlorine, you have the pesticides, which will create a bigger chemical hazard. And then there is another hazard, which we'll talk about. It's normally called, put under the chemical hazard, but it's so big by itself, people try to categorize. It's allergens, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Next slide, Linnell. So first we're going to talk about microorganisms. And I know I listened to most of you on, so I know this is going to probably be a refresher for you, but we'll go a little bit into it because for us to talk about the food safety, we need to understand the microorganisms that's causing us to be sick, because they are so small, we can't see them. We have microorganisms. It's like the virus, like COVID, the COVID virus. Look how much damage it's caused, how much death, but nobody has seen COVID with the naked eyes. So it's not any different than the food. The food industry got really, really lucky this time and the pandemic, because COVID was not transmitted through food. I remember when COVID just started, everybody would say, take this to your food, you'd put your food outside, you wouldn't touch it, you'd leave it out for 5 days. Thanks God it turned out it was not transmitted through food. So we'll talk a little bit, next slide, please, Linnell. So I'll show you a little video and to get you started. Linnell, can you click on the video? Hopefully,
no problem. I already have it loaded, so I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll open my screen to YouTube.
Okay. Oh, you couldn't click on it through the presentation?
It would take too long that way.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
No worries. So while Linnell is uploading the video, can I get a few things from a few of you? What is your expected learning from here? What do you expect to gain from the game? Oh, Linnell's ready, so. I think it's the wrong one, Linnell.
Oh, let's see.
But we'll do it anyway. It's the wrong one.
So should we do it anyway?
Yeah, I was gonna, so all right, you guys. No, because it's gonna take the whole presentation away. Do you have the other one?
Let's see. This is just like the stress.
It's the hand washing with Seinfeld. So if Linnell gets this right, yeah, that one.
Hand washing. I think yes, I think I see this one.
Yeah. So what you guys will see when Linnell gets this up is an example about the importance of hand washing and a little bit for us to get started. But in the meantime, you guys can type 1 or 2 words in 1 or 2 sentences or word in the chat of what is your expectation? What do you expect to gain from that food safety session? And hopefully I'll cover it, and if not, we'll go back and get it.
Everyone is silent.
I guess everybody's not ready for it.
Okay, let's see. Should
All right,
be
don't forget to
loading.
type what are your expectations while you watch the video. You got it,
Yeah,
Vanessa?
the video should be loading
Okay.
right now. The internet is just.
I'm going to the bathroom. You know.
All right, so I need you to watch the video and tell me what you see. Thank you, Roxanne.
I'm going to the bathroom. You know.
Jerry, tonight you in for a real treat. I'm personally going to prepare the dinner for you and the Mayodri.
Jerry, you okay?
Huh?
Is anything wrong?
Nothing.
You look like you've seen a ghost.
Here it is.
Oh, wait till you taste this. Poppy, this is perfect.
Well,
Jerry, have some. You're not going to taste it? Jerry.
Okay. So what do you guys think? How many times have you gone out to? How many times have you gone out to eat and observed people not washing their hands?
I could have stayed home and ordered a pizza from Taquinos.
Taquinos? Oh no, you should never order pizza from Taquinos.
Why not?
Because
Can you turn it off?
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay.
So I don't know about you guys, but how many times you go to the bathroom or you are out someplace and you come out, you hear people use the bathroom and they walk right out. They never wash their hands. And most of the times, sometimes it's people in the food that's preparing your food. Or in the Caribbean, when we eat on the roadside, when we eat on the roadside, we have a lot of those roadside vendors that prepare food for us. And when I'm in St. Lucia or the Caribbean or in Africa, wherever, I look around and there's no hand washing facility, there's no bathroom, and this person just gave me a piece of chicken. And so I asked myself, and they're there for the whole day, is where do they go to the bathroom? How do they wash their hands? They're handling money and all of that. So most of the time when I go out, a lot of my family don't want to go out with me because I'll call those out, because it is a huge, huge problem. Not washing your hands, you get bacteria on it, and then you transfer it to the food. A lot of people say for the reason they don't eat out, but as you look around, observe that and observe where they're going to the bathroom, where they're washing their hands. Do they have a bottle of sanitizer before you buy the food? Okay, Lanelle, I think you need to go back one. Okay, good, next. Then go forward, thank you. Go. Okay, so we said food poisoning. The number one cause of food poisoning is the improper cooking and storage of food. But second to that, it comes from poor hygiene. You saw in that first clip that the guy did not wash his hands. And what did he do? He cooked the dough and he baked it and he made pizza. So you say to yourself, so what's the problem? He cooked the pizza. Why is that a problem? Why was it a problem that he didn't wash his hands? Because if you saw him, it was pizza. He made the pizza, but he cooked it. Why wasn't cooking enough for him to not to be disgusting? Would you be okay to eat it if you did just because it was cooked? Apron should be taken off when going to the bathroom, exactly. Althea, you want to tell me why the apron has to be taken off? Althea, you want to tell me why the apron has to be taken off?
Oh, yes. Because you can pick up little germs by the way.
Yes, exactly. You can pick up the germs from the bathroom when you think about what's happening in the bathroom. And even if you cook it, you can put it after the cooking step. And then somebody else said, let me see this in the chat. I'm following the chat. Anika, I hope I said that right, but I thought heat kills the bacteria. That's true. The heat kills the bacteria, but like Anika said before, that if you do not clean your clothes, your hair, your hands, you can transfer the bacteria to the food. His ring also can be a source. There you go. His hair also can be a source of the bacteria. And then there's some bacteria that can produce toxin that cooking does not inactivate. So cooking will kill a lot of stuff, but then cooking will not inactivate. And then there's just the yuck factor, right? Who wants to eat something when everybody scratched themselves, touch himself? You don't know what he has. So that's why, even though you're gonna cook it, it's called adulterated because the food was not made under sanitary conditions. His hair also, and that's exactly. Even sweat might drop into the dough. It's just that the yuck factor is high to begin with, plus all the other things around him, a potential for foodborne poisoning. Great. Thank you, guys. Next one, Lynette. And so when we making food, foodborne illness affects everyone, but like everything else, like COVID, the people at the highest risk of dying from food poisoning are the young children and the elderly, because the immune systems are already compromised. Next slide, Lynette. So gastrointestinal symptoms of foodborne poisoning, I'm sure all of you have seen it or experienced it are, next slide, Lynette. There are 4 major ones. You can have all of them, or you can have 4. So you get nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and abdominal pain. Most foodborne poisoning will not kill you. It just makes you wish you were dead. If you've ever experienced a bad case of foodborne poisoning, when you finish it, it is like, wow, makes you wish you were dead. There are a few that will kill you, and we'll talk about them, but the majority of the foodborne poisoning illness makes you really sick, except if you are a child, or if you are an elderly person, or if you have an immune system. Galaxy said, although heat kills bacteria, some bacteria need the right temperature to do so. That exactly is true. You need time and temperature. Very good. Thanks, Galaxy. Sorry for calling you Galaxy because your name is not on there. Great, guys. Next one, Lynelle. Now 6, that's coming from the World Health Organization, and that's globally, right? 600 million foodborne diseases annually globally. So can you just try to imagine what that is? That's more people than all the people in the Caribbean put together. And then out of that, now this is the ones that's reported. This is not the ones that we don't report. In the Caribbean, we don't have a good way of reporting our foodborne illnesses. We always think that it's just a flu or something I ate, but we don't know what it is because we don't have a very good way of tracking it. And Alita said, I had food poisoning from roti where I suffered with abdominal pain. Yes, and you'll see why probably the roti makes you sick. Or we say it's gas. Yes, first time. So a lot of the reasons that we don't report food safety, and we have the misconception that food safety is not a major issue in the Caribbean. Next slide. So out of the 600 million, that's just remember documented cases, 420 deaths, 1,000 deaths. So in the US and in the developing countries, the way they monitor it, it's very high tech. The labs, if you go to the hospital or if you get sick, and now foodborne illnesses, let me say that, it's one where you have 1, 2 or more cases of people reporting that they're sick. If you are one individual case, it's not a foodborne outbreak, you have to have 2 or more. And they can track you down by what food you ate, how did you get sick. I'll give you an example of an outbreak that we had right before I retired from Kellogg. It was from cereal. And who would think cereal would make you sick? Because you are a cereal, right? Question from Narissa. Does Narissa have a question? If you do,
yes,
go ahead.
I do have a question. My question is, do you die of born illness, or do you die as a result of something that is provoked by it?
So the foodborne illness, what you eat. So a good question. You can die from it because it compromises your system. You can get kidney failure, right? Is one of the biggest cases of it that will cause your systems to shut down based on the bacteria that you ingest.
So it is not directly, it is as a result of.
It's as a result of, right? Like you ingest them, because a healthy person might not have any symptoms, but somebody who's under compromise, or if you take more of it, it's damaging your internal organs and causing organ failure. It causes your system not to function properly. That's why you have the diarrhea, the vomiting, like everything else. So it's like we had a salmonella case that we were making shredded wheat cereal. And we got a call from the government that said they had, in the matter of a week, 10 people had called and said they were having vomiting and they're having diarrhea. And turned out that when we did investigation, the factory that was making the cereal, they had stopped washing the line. They were cleaning it halfway. And then they produced a toxin, which we'll talk about, and the bacteria, salmonella, was growing in there. And salmonella can survive on a dry surface and cause you to get sick. So they were eating the dry cereal. When they put it in, they got sick. So you can get sick in 2 ways. You can get sick with an infection or intoxication. So most of the things we talk about, you see, you have to actually eat the bacteria like Salmonella and E. coli, and they grow inside of you and then multiply and make you sick. Or like botulism, the bacteria is not present, but it produces a toxin that can make you sick. Vomiting and diarrhea leads to dehydration, then low blood volume can shut down kidney major organs. Yes, exactly. Smart group. Okay, so next slide. And most of the death, unfortunately, occurs in children. As we said, they were one of the vulnerable population. Next slide. So who can guess what that number is for the Caribbean, or if there is a problem in the Caribbean? What do you think we have the number of foodborne illnesses? Is it high? Is it low? What is it? You can use your chat or you can just speak up. Or Linnell will call on somebody.
Well, I never came across any information on that, so I'm not sure what's going on there.
But what do you think? Do you think it exists, or you don't think we have a problem because we cook everything?
I think it exists, but it's like I personally don't like privy to those information, so
yeah.
I don't know.
So low because it goes unreported. That's very true. After disaster, cholera, yes. So next slide, Lynette. Now this is a very, very low number that CAFTA, the organization that does food safety for the Caribbean, says 1 in 49, 142,000 foodborne illness. Now that's all of the Caribbean. I don't think it's not just SVG or St. Lucia, it's all of the Caribbean put together, including Puerto Rico and the Latin American countries. So that is extremely low. And I forgot who said that. It's underreported because we don't have a way to report it. And somebody said, when you get sick, we don't know if it's a foodborne outbreak. And most of the time when we get sick, we think right away is the thing I ate. Very, very seldom that when you get sick, you feel the symptoms right away. Because if it's an infection, you have to eat it, and it takes anywhere from 6 to 8 hours before you start getting sick. If it's an intoxication where you produce toxin, then yes, it happens immediately, but most of the time it takes time. So when you get sick, don't think about the food I just ate made me sick. Think about what did I eat within the last 24 hours. So unfortunately for us in the Caribbean, it goes underreported. So we believe we don't have an issue. We don't have recalls because we don't have sources to do the recalls. When the developing countries have recalls, unfortunately, so many times I've come down to the Caribbean, I've seen recalled food still on the shelf because the developed countries, they don't reach out to the products, or the products are sold outside of the system. So recall is not even something we talk about. So that's why you find that food safety is not a big priority for us now, because we're not reporting it and we're managing it. But as we get more developed, as we start wanting to import food, as we have more susceptible environment, and we sell food to the hotel and globalization, we are going to have to start learning how to prepare food safely. And you guys are the lucky few that you get to understand a little bit more. How do you do that, even though you don't have a place to, nobody's tracking it. Oh, interesting. Tell me more about that. Somebody said we had a recall. This is a Couriers had a recall last week on baby food? Similar. What was it for? Was it for a microorganism or for something else? Can you tell us a little bit about that? If you don't overcook the food, can you get food poisoning? If you don't overcook the food, yeah, you can get food poisoning if you don't overcook it. I'll tell you the right temperature for cooking foods. So for me now, if you ask me, I eat everything so well done. First is the Caribbean in me, and then second is I know what can happen. So my food is cooked well done to the end where you can't even find yourself to chew it again. You can, okay, so the recalls happen, and somebody said that it's unfortunate that the recall in the developing countries are not reported, or they don't come fast enough. It's very depressing, I can tell you that, because like before, when I worked with Kellogg's, we have the responsibility and we're supposed to say where all the food went to and tell everybody where the food is. Unfortunately, you have people who will go to like a Costco or wholesale place and buy the food and then sell it on their own. And when that is out, then you lose the traceability on the food. Or sometimes when the smaller countries get the recall, they don't bother to take it off the shelf. So it's a huge problem for us. All right, let's continue. So let's go into microorganisms. Next one. Next slide. So when I look at microorganisms, I classify them, think about them as the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's a good way to remember it. So not all microorganisms will make you sick. The good ones are, next slide. So when you, no, one slide, yeah. So good microorganisms. So like lactic acid bacteria or yeast and molds, good microorganism. So our bodies are all fully loaded. As you learn in school, we are microorganisms live in us, right? We all have microorganisms in our guts, in our belly. You hear about the gut microbes that you have to eat that helps your system. So those are all good microorganisms. For us to have cheese, we need to have lactic acid bacteria. Penicillin, we know it's with mold. And of course, alcohol, beer, and wine are all the good microorganisms. The bad microorganism, next slide, are the ones that they don't make you sick, they just make you feel like you are sick. So the rotten banana, the moldy bread, the mangoes, and actually you can cut some of those out and still use them. The sour milk, the browning of the banana browning can be either through, I think you guys have done some of the work sustainable agriculture, but the browning can be through some of the enzymatic reaction, but it can also be because of mold or yeast. So those are the bad ones. If your meat is spoiled, no amount of seasoning, cooking can stop a bad occurrence. That is true. If your meat is spoiled, you can cook it to death and you might be able to eat it, but the quality of it, the taste, the flavor that might be bad if it's spoiled. Yes. Okay, next slide. So the dangerous microorganisms, or the ugly ones, we call them, are the hepatitis, the listerias, and the salmonella. Now, those are called pathogenic bacteria. And they're pathogenic because they can make you sick, and they are normally transferred through food. Now, if you take this bacteria outside of food, it will cause a different kind of illness. It will cause a clinical manifestation, but most of them are foodborne microorganisms. The microorganisms are so small, like I said, you can't see them with the naked eye. So your food that is spoiled with salmonella or listeria, somebody said they ate a roti and they got sick, that roti would look just fine and tasty and might even be hot. So you won't see those ugly microorganisms. So what we'll do now is go through each one of them briefly and talk about how they cause illness. Okay, Lynette? So Campylobacter is Campylobacter, right? It's the leading cause of foodborne poisoning. Next slide. Never heard of listeria. We'll talk about it in a minute. So eating or coming in contact with raw or undercooked chicken. Now, I know we are good at looking at our chicken and making sure it's cooked to the bone. I know that's a culture that we have. Nobody will eat the chicken if it's not well done. I know for most people in the Caribbean, that's true. However, the problem with Campylobacter comes in, and we'll talk about it, is when we use the chicken and the celery. So you see that chicken on that cutting board and next to the celery. Sometimes we use the celery as garnish and we don't cook it. So that Campylobacter transfers from the chicken onto the celery stick, what we call cross-contamination, and then that makes us sick. So that is a big problem for us, Campylobacter in chicken. And it's not just chicken, it's other raw meat as well, but chicken is the most common one. Next slide. And how do you prevent that? Like I said, wash your hands. Work surface is best prevention for cross-contamination. Hot water and soap, or better yet, a diluted bleach. And then we'll talk about hand washing and bleaching. So if you look at the wood, the cutting board, the cross-contamination is most of the time you do your chicken and then you put it away, and then you go and cut your salad on the same board, you get a problem. How many people, a show of hands, believe it's a good practice to wash your raw chicken or your turkey or your raw beef before you cook it? Show of hands, how many people think that it's okay to wash your hands? You have to cook your chicken before you eat it. So I see Galaxy said yes. A lot of people say you have to wash your chicken. All right, I'm here to tell you the answer is no. Don't fall off your chair and don't think I'm disgusting, but it is not good practice to wash your chicken before you cook it. And I know that's a big taboo for us in the Caribbean because we believe you have to wash the hell out of the chicken and then cook it. You have to take all the veins out. The reason why it's said not to wash the chicken, and maybe it doesn't apply to you because you can wash it, but it's really hard because when you wash the chicken, you are taking the germs that you cannot see and spreading it all across, not just in the immediate vicinity. It goes on your countertop, it goes on your knives, it goes on your pipe head, it goes everywhere. And so what we are finding is a lot of foodborne poisoning is becoming because of that. And so to prevent that, it said not to wash the chicken and cook it, because washing the chicken doesn't get rid of the bacteria. It just washes some of the germs out. The cooking is what gets rid of the bacteria. So if you are going to or continue to wash your chicken, you have to be careful that you are going to wash it in a very isolated place. Make sure you don't have any cups, knives, or anything else close by. If I have a little exercise that I do, and I use like the glow germ, if we were in person, I'd do that. And you'd be amazed to see how much, even though the most careful person is on washing the chicken, how far that germ spreads. It's really, really hard to do that. And if you are going to wash your chicken, not only should you use hot water, you should use a diluted bleach solution, because washing in of itself does not kill bacteria. And that's another thing we have to, it does not kill the bacteria. Okay? So I know that's a myth, and I know that's a theory in the Caribbean. When I tell people not to wash their chicken or their raw meat, even at my house, my family looks like I have, I've been taken over by the aliens, that I'm nasty. But again, washing the chicken is a high risk of cross-contamination. Somebody say we use a cutting board and we cut a lot of stuff on the cutting board. Yes. The best practice is cut the ready-to-eat food, the salads and everything first, and then chicken after, if you have to. If you use the chicken first, then wash the boards. All right, let's keep going. We have a lot to do. Okay. Next slide, Lynette. Salmonella, a lot of you have heard salmonella again, the second leading cause of food poisoning. It's often associated with undercooked foods such as eggs and chicken again. Now, raw eggs, a lot of people will eat raw eggs for healthy reasons, or we put raw eggs in cookie dough. That's a big problem because salmonella is in there. If you eat it raw, then you can get food poisoning from salmonella. Salmonella is huge for foodborne poisoning. Alita said, I used to wash chicken before, but was advised by a chef not to. So now you know why. Great. Thanks, Alita. I'm hoping everybody will take that, if you take nothing else, but take that into consideration. Next slide. Even eating raw cookie dough and cake batter. How many of us eat raw batter? So when you're making cake, you put eggs in there, and then I know as a kid, we used to lick the plate, but that has raw eggs in it. And there's so many outbreaks because of eating raw batter. So if you are eating raw batter, if you're tasting the batter, be very careful that one lick might be your last one. And especially do not give it to kids. I know, again, it's a practice, it's a culture probably, that people eat raw cookie dough, you taste it, but that's undercooked raw eggs. You're gonna use raw eggs and you don't taste it. Next one. Okay, next one. E. coli. Now, when you have E. coli, I call E. coli, in other words, the poop bacteria. Disgusting. Somebody asked, what about puncher cream? It's one of my favorite, puncher cream. So the puncher cream is okay because you have the alcohol and the acidity that will not let the bacteria grow. So keep drinking your puncher cream, as long as it has alcohol in it. If it doesn't have alcohol, I would stay away from it.
And question, sometimes, right, some people mix orange juice and egg. Well, they say it's good to build up your body, or grape juice. Is that bad?
Yes, that's bad because you have the raw eggs. Now, the good news is if the orange juice has a pH below 4.6, which most juice have, then you can drink it. But then by adding the eggs, you're diluting it. Okay. So
I have a question. Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question, a rather concern. I am living in one of the Grenadine islands in St. Vincent, and normally we get our product from the mainland, which travel by a ferry for many hours, and a lot of the meats and chicken and stuff like that travel on those ferries, like for practically, many hours. So how is that?
Is it refrigerated?
Most of them don't have that.
Yeah, so that's a big problem. And I don't know why more people don't get sick because they don't report it. Like when I'm in the Caribbean, we buy fish. The fishermen have their fish sitting outside for days or blowing their horns. And you guys see that, I'm sure. And the fish is not refrigerated. So that is a big risk. We need to invest more into refrigeration. And again, we don't think it's a problem because everybody gets sick and they go their own way, but it's a big, big problem.
Yeah, some of the boats have refrigeration, but not a whole lot. That if you they have
Yes.
a lot of stuff to.
So a lot of the Caribbean, we need our government to provide more infrastructure to help with refrigeration. Refrigerator is not a thing that we use. And we go on and we don't have anything. What about if the fish is on ice? Yes, if the fish is on ice, it can hold because it's a form of refrigeration. But not everybody has the ability to put it on ice. And I've seen fish just sitting out there for days, or like you said, not just the Caribbean, but in the developing countries, that they don't have the resources for the cooling system. Okay. So let's continue with the E. coli. Good questions, everyone. Thank you. I appreciate that. So E. coli, like I said, for a disgusting factor, if you see E. coli in your food and you're getting sick, it's like from the ground beef. It lives in the intestines of animals, including humans. And so most of the time, if you're testing your food or if you have E. coli in it, it's somebody didn't wash their hands. They went to the bathroom and do a number 2 and didn't wash their hands properly, or they touched something and it got into your food. So that is a pretty disgusting thing. Not all E. coli pathogenic, but they have Escherichia coli 0157. They have so many outbreaks, and then you have so many horrible stories. It destroys your kidney failure, and the kids that get it, they die a horrible death. And I'll show you a video earlier, but it's really important. And it can be prevented because it's simply washing your hands with soap and water and sanitizer. Next slide. Next one. So like we said, meat is not the only source. Any food or liquid can become contaminated. It comes in contact with the infected fecal matter. Even the sewage contaminated floodwaters can pose a threat. Not even, so like we'll talk about later about why you shouldn't have runoff. Because one of the biggest recalls in the US is on lettuce. You hear lettuce all the time is in romaine. And the reason because they have runoff water and the farmers, they don't think about food safety. They have the cows, their fields over the water, and it blows into the water system and causes contamination. And we'll talk about a little bit that. Some people pick their nose that don't wash their hand and they towards food. Again, yes. So that one, if you pick your nose and you go into food, again, disgusting factor, but what you will get is staph poisoning, not salmonella per se or E. coli, but staph. And we'll talk a little bit about staph. Next slide. So if you do like me, you cook everything to death. In the Caribbean, I know we cook everything to death until there's no pink remain. Like a lot of people, and my mother is 80 years old. I don't know, God help her. This woman will eat her hamburger raw. And I won't serve it to her if we go out, we won't give it to her, but she insists it doesn't taste good. But please don't eat raw hamburgers. Okay, next slide. Now, Listeria is a new organism. Well, when I say new in the last maybe 50 years, 20 years, when it became a problem. Listeriosis, it's often associated with consuming raw milk, soft cheeses, or cold cuts like deli meats. If you are buying ham sandwich or turkey sandwich or sprout, those are very high with Listeria. Now, Listeria in itself, it's not a problem for most people. And Listeria is different than most of the organisms because they grow in refrigeration. So refrigeration will stop the growth of most pathogens, but Listeria, it will grow in refrigeration, in ice cream and other places like that. So next slide. Next slide. So the reason why Listeria is such a problem, it's not a leading cause of foodborne illness, but it will affect pregnant women. So if you are pregnant and you eat raw milk or you eat soft cheeses or you eat cold cuts, then it can cause you to abort the baby because it attacks the fetus and destroy the system and cause preterm labor. So that is something that a lot of people don't know about. So if you know of anybody else that's pregnant, make sure that they don't consume raw milk, the soft cheeses or cold cuts especially, and sprouts. They would fix the Boston chicken and throw it out in the sun. Oh yeah, that is a big problem, throwing your food out in the sun. We still do that though. We throw our chicken out on the countertop. I know a lot of people, even in my own house, I get a problem every time I turn around. We like to put the food out on the countertop to throw it out. That is bad food practice and #1 cause of foodborne illness. Okay, next slide. Botulism. Oh, botulism, food poisoning, and that's not a common thing, but in the Caribbean, we need to worry about it. And you probably heard about the CAN syndrome. Keep going, Linnell. Now, botulism is one of those organisms that's an intoxication. The bacteria gets killed. It's not around, but it produces a toxin. And the toxin is so potent that they say if you put 1 teaspoon of that pure toxin in the New York water supplies, it will make everybody sick. This is how potent it is. Now, on the flip side, you have people have Botox. You might have heard the celebrities take Botox to make their face younger. Those crazy people are actually putting the bad toxin, injecting it in the system because the toxin causes paralysis of your system. So they're putting a little bit to paralyze their face, so it takes away the wrinkles. So if you see somebody that had Botox, most of the time if it goes wrong, you see that they can't smile for about a few hours after they take it because the toxin is paralyzing their face. Now, for us in the Caribbean, where we need to worry about it is the canned foods. Now, I get very upset when I go into the Caribbean and I see there's a shelf that have all the damaged canned food on sale for $1 or for 50 cents or for whatever. Be very careful when you use dented canned foods because the dented can that's damaged, it creates a little pocket where the bacteria, the botulism can grow in it. And it will stay there. The bacteria itself will die, but it will produce the toxin because it doesn't need oxygen to grow and then cause a problem. Or if you get your can that's bulging, do not touch it. Taste it. When in doubt, throw out. If you are doing canning, also if you are doing agro-processing, we can our juices, you need to be very careful. The good news is it doesn't grow in acidic food. So if you have food that's 4.6 juices, then you'll be okay. But if you are going into canning, make sure that you are very careful about that. Next slide. Okay, next one, Lynette. Okay, we talked about all that. Keep going. Next. Again, we covered that. When in doubt, throw out. Now, I wanted to bring this, touch this a little bit. So infant botulism is when you give infants honey. There's the honey theory. 1 second, Lynette. I think there's some people, when the kids are teething, they put honey in their teeth from anywhere from 0 to a year. That causes infant botulism and can cause death. And most of us don't know why kids die, but if you know of anybody, please do not feed kids from 0 to 1 year honey because the spores grows into the kid's system. They cannot digest the spores, it produces toxin and cause death. So be aware of that. Next slide. We're running out of time. Keep going, I have to speed up. Next one, Lynette. Botulism. Now staph, we said, now staph is another that produces toxins. Somebody said you touch your nose and then you touch the food. That's the organism you get from that. So touching your nose, your hair, your skin, because we are all full of staph, but that's why good hygiene is required so that we are not getting sick. So that one you get in your nose is called Staphylococcus aureus. Also, it's called the flesh-eating disease. So this one is not a foodborne poisoning, but if people get sick with it and you have a sore and it's in there, then it will start eating at your flesh, and there's no cure for it because it's resistant to any drugs. But mostly it's from poor hygiene. So is information like that given to persons in the supermarket? I hope so. Unfortunately, not as widespread as it is. I'm trying to work with the ministries that's responsible for the CAFTA on getting that out broader, but we have a long way to go. Next slide. So there's another thing, that there is no cure for food poisoning. Keep going, Lynette. Lynelle. So once you get food poisoning, and if you get it bad, there's not a drug I can give you to take it. You have to drink plenty of fluid. If symptoms become severe, at least for longer than 12 hours, they'll give you some drips. Next slide. But once you have it, all you can do is let it go out of your system. Do not try to vomit it out. Don't take Pepto-Bismol. When we like to take Pepto-Bismol, don't take the Pepto-Bismol, because what it does, it just causes the bacteria to stay in you longer. It will stop you from throwing up or having diarrhea, because when you have the diarrhea and the throwing up, it's letting the organism run out of your system. But if you try to stop it with Pepto-Bismol or any other thing, it just delays it. So we have the perception that we can cure it. Once we have it, it can't be cured. It just have to run its course. It's just like COVID. Okay. So we'll touch, so that was microbial hazard, and I'm rushing through this because there's so much to give, and I told you guys just an awareness, and you can get more. I have a reference for you in the slides of where to get more details. But then we have physical hazard is another hazard that we talk about food safety, and they can come from cigarette, matchstick, stones, stems, seeds, hair. That's why you have to wear your hairnet, feathers, jewelry, nails, bowls, nuts and bolts. Sorry, I'm supposed to say nuts and bolts, and nails and strings and buttons. So at home, but also when you're doing food preparation for consumers on your farm, those are the things you need to wear. And then there is ways you can prevent them by wearing your hairnet, not wearing jewelry, not wearing nail polish when you're in the farm, and then making sure you have like a screen or filter. In some cases, if you're a bigger organization, you can have a metal detector to get some of those metals out, or glass. So that's physical hazard. We're not going to spend a lot on it, but I want you to be aware of it. Next slide. Now, food allergies is another big one, but we have to worry about it. In the Caribbean, we say we don't have food allergies. I remember there was a recall of a food in Brazil, and we had to recall the food, and the government would not let Kellogg recall the food because they say the people don't have allergies. And make it worse, it was carnival, so we couldn't get anybody to help. But food allergy is a big problem. You may know somebody that have an allergic reaction to food. So it can kill you if you have an allergic reaction to food. The biggest one is peanut. My niece has to walk around with her EpiPen because just the smell of the nuts will make her sick. If you are making food in your processing plants at home, be careful. If you know somebody who's allergic to peanut butter, there was a case where the lady ate the peanut butter and went and kissed her niece on the face, and the child broke out in hives. So it's a big, big problem. I know in the West Indies, we don't take enough precautions on it, but it's there. So the three hazards are microorganisms, physical, microbial, physical, and chemical. Okay, next slide. So we'll take a quick break and we'll do a little answer to check your knowledge on Jeopardy. And we'll just take 5 minutes on that, and then we'll go to the other half of the training, which is the kitchen safety. And then
No
you have
problem.
that.
Yes.
How is
5
everybody
minutes
doing
break.
so far? Give me a thumbs up if you guys are following, if everybody's still awake. No thumbs up. Use your.
Oh, we have 4 thumbs up. 5.
Alright, great. So the Jeopardy, it's going to be like this. Somebody's gonna pick, we'll do the first part, a category, and don't be afraid whether they get it right or wrong. It's just a way to check our understanding, and we'll see who gets the answer. You ready, Linnell? All right, so we can take out the 3 teams and just press start. We won't do teams. So the way it goes again, we'll do 1, no teams, put 0. No teams, yes, start. All right, so we have microorganisms. So we haven't done all the others. We'll do foodborne illness and microorganisms. So you can pick from this category. So somebody can say, give me microorganism for 100. The 100 is an easier question. The 500 is a little bit more difficult. And then once you get the clue, you have to give me it in the form of a question. Okay? Now I need participation. No answer is wrong. Go ahead, Linnell. So who wants to go first? What category? I'll give you an example since while you're warming up and you guys are afraid of it. So I'll say microorganism for 100. Let me turn that over. Living things that are too small to be seen with the naked eyes. Anybody have the answer?
What is microorganism?
Oh, who was that?
Roxanne Hamilton.
Roxanne, we're gonna owe you a lot of gifts, Roxanne. What are microorganisms? Great. All right. Very good. Thanks, Roxanne. Anybody else wants to go? Come on, guys. Don't let me down.
But foodborne illnesses for 200.
All right. Good for you. Nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain. What do you think?
What causes of food poisoning? What are symptoms of food poisoning?
Very good. What are symptoms of food poisoning? See, it's not that hard. Is it hard? No. Good. We have a couple more categories. Who wants to go? Let's do 2 more.
Kitchen hygiene for 100.
We're gonna do kitchen hygiene. We haven't covered it yet, but go ahead.
Oh.
Handling, preparation, and proper storage of food to prevent illness.
What is food safety?
Go ahead, Linnell. You guys are too smart for your own good. All right. Let's do 2 more.
Food illness for 100.
Food illness for 100. Go for the big one. Food illness for 100. Okay. The elderly, the very young, pregnant women, immunocompromised individuals. Yeah, you want to go for it? Any guess?
Who are vulnerable to food poisoning?
In a question format.
Who are vulnerable persons to food poisoning?
Yes, go ahead, Melton, the answer. What are groups of people more susceptible to food poisoning? Great. All right, so we'll come back to that for a little bit. Anybody dying to take one more category before we turn it over? Go back.
True or false for 200.
Which one?
True or false for 200.
True or false for 200. Washing kills bacteria.
True.
And false.
One was.
It wasn't me.
Remember we said washing does not kill bacteria. You
Yes,
have to
especially
cook it
baking.
or you have to sanitize it.
So, exactly.
Yeah, very good. All right. Anybody dying to do one more? Or we can come back. We'll come back to that at the end too if we have
I
time.
want to do a big number.
You want to do a big number? Go for it. You want a 500?
Yeah.
Which one?
True or false for 500.
True or false for 500? Food safety and recalls are not a major issue in the Caribbean. True or false?
True. True.
False. Just go unreported.
True. Yes, it's
Underreported.
false. It's underreported. Very good. All right. All right, so this is going to be available to you guys to test it, and we'll come back again at the end. And you can use it if you want to for yourself, but to test yourself, Lynette, it'll be available in your package. All right, so we have a little less than half hour, all right, Lynette?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna have to speed up a little
That
bit.
one is true.
Which one? That we have half hour?
Yes.
Everybody have jokes, okay. So let's do, Linnell, this is the one for the kitchen safety video. Linnell?
Yes.
Oh no, what slide is this? What one is this one?
Slide 49.
No, yeah. So this one is going to be, guys, come on, let's click on that. No, go back on now. So we're going to go into more into kitchen safety a little bit. Up. No, where? Keep going. What's the next one? All right, so I want you guys to pay attention. No. Tell me how many things, go back to that first one, yes. How many issues can you identify? Put your number in the chat. Look at this picture and put your number in the chat of how many issues you can identify. Just put, if it's from 1 to 10, whatever you see, put it in.
The picture is not so clear, but I was the 10.
You saw too many. So remember, you're looking for issues, right? Major ones. 10, somebody said 10, 8, 6, 8. We have 52 people. Come on, guys. 11, 10. Anything else? All right, so 9. So the people that say 10, tell me what your 10s are, your 10 ones are. So somebody said 10. I'm gonna call the person that said 10. Who said 10? Oh, Kanisha, you had 8. What were your 8?
I see a cockroach on the cupboard.
Yeah.
The soapy sponge on the counter.
Okay.
There's meat and the fruits next to it. The dirty dishes. Garbage bin that's full. It's not only full, but it doesn't seem to be sorted. And I think I'm seeing blood leaking out of the fridge.
Okay, so how many is that? So what you said 8, so that's 6. Did you have 2 more?
There's something I'm seeing at the oven, but it's not really clear to me.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that's also 1.
Yeah. So the answer is actually 6. So go to the next one, Linnell. And you can click a couple times, keep clicking. We have the sponge, and the reason the sponge is a problem is not because it's soapy, because it's a dirty sponge and it's just hanging out and it's moist and it's an area for bacteria to grow. And you said it very well, we have raw meat on our vegetables. We have the refrigerator looks like it's not working. So you have the stuff from the refrigerator leaking out. The garbage can is in the middle. It has fish, it has fruits, all sources of bacterial growth. And then you have the dishes sitting on top of each other on the stove that's not clean, all sources of bacteria. Okay? Good job, guys. Now, so imagine you going into dinner and you invited to dinner, your friends are having a barbecue, you pray, and then you eat food, and then you happen to go in the back, and actually happened to me, and you go in the back to go to the bathroom, and then you see this. Next slide, Danielle. That's the food, that's the place where the food was prepared for you. How do you feel about that? I know I wanted to throw up. I wanted to snatch their head off. So this is to show you that food hygiene, whether it's at home or in the house, or whether you have to prepare the food, and the culture of making sure that even though nobody's watching, you're doing the right thing. Nobody wants to do this. Yes, you have to leave, but unfortunately I already ate the food, so I couldn't leave. All I had to do was get disgusted. I couldn't leave because I already ate the food. So now when I do that, I always go to the bathroom first and pass by the kitchen to make sure I see what's happening. At least they have bleach to sanitize. True, but it was too late. So again, think about it this way at home, and also when you're preparing food for others, you have to make sure that the food is not prepared under unsanitary condition. Okay, next slide.
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Yeah. Go ahead.
For when you start, like when you cook food and you have leftovers and you're gonna store it, what time, how quickly you need to get that in refrigerated?
All right, so the rule of thumb is the food should be refrigerated 2 hours after you cook it. But we know we don't do that. How many times we go out to barbecues and to everything else, or in our own home, we have our food sitting out there forever and we don't refrigerate it. We need to keep it cool or put it inside something within 2 hours of cooking. And if we don't do that, we need to keep it at a temperature that is gonna keep it not boiling, but hot. And we'll show you the danger zone as we go down.
And
somebody said 2 hours, we leave it over. Go ahead, Linnell.
A question. Should
Yes?
we cook our food uncovered or covered?
Yeah, you can cook it. Depends on what you're cooking. So the question is not whether it's covered or not. The question is what's overhead, so you don't want things falling in it. But from a cooking standpoint, the thing is that all of the food is reaching a core temperature of 74 degrees or 165 to make sure you're cooking the bacteria. So covering it is from a physical hazard, but not necessarily from a microbial hazard. Alita said, I went to a restaurant one time, ate and asked to use the washroom. When I got there, I had to step over wash pan of meat. Then you meeting dead lizard. Yes, that is a failure, and they should not be operating like that. So it's eat at your own risk when you go out, really. So the thing you need to learn from that, the takeaway is here, when you do your farm, and when you're cooking on your farm, that those practices is something that you use. Kellyanne said there's more medicine bottles than seasoning bottles. That's true. All right.
Another question, please. Can you store your food while it's warm in a refrigerator? Is that a...
Yes, you can, but it's recommended that you don't put the boiling food in, because it's gonna cause too much condensate. So you have to cool it down a little bit to a certain temperature and then store it.
Okay,
so let's
thank you.
Great. So let's go quickly about the cleaning, washing your hands. Again, it's about cleaning. We'll go quickly through it because it's common sense. Keep going, Linnell. Again, use hot soap and water and diluted bleach. Remember, soap and water does not kill bacteria. The only thing that kills bacteria is cooking it or sanitizing it. Soap and water is good for getting rid of most of the dirt on your hands and on surfaces. Next slide. So you have to wash your hands, your countertop, and use soap and water and detergent. Next slide. We talk a lot about cross-contamination. So cross-contamination is the process by which bacteria are transferred from one area to another. And we saw that in the kitchen. The raw meat, which is contaminated bacteria. I like to tell people there's no such thing as a salmonella-free chicken. So raw chicken has salmonella, or raw food, there's no such thing as a raw chicken that doesn't have salmonella. So make sure that you're not washing the chicken. And if you wash the chicken before you cook it, that you're covering everything and you're sanitizing everything, even further out than you think the aerosol goes. Cross-contamination, our hands. Next slide, Manel. Again, don't wash the chicken. And then your cutting boards. Cutting boards is a big source of contamination because we cook the raw chicken, we just push it out and we put something else, like we have the fruits in there, the bananas, that can cause cross-contamination. So at home, and then you'll see in your farm when you do produce that cross-contamination is a big problem, and we have to learn how to make sure that we separate the containers. So you don't put one container that has yams that's gonna be cooked and then put tomatoes or mangoes or something that's not gonna be cooked in the same container for transportation. Next slide. Cooking. So we asked that question before. We recommended that your food has to be cooked at 74 degrees. That's a recommendation. And I know for a good thing about us in the Caribbean, and I don't know if that's changed a lot, we cook our food, we really kill the food when we cook it, right? True? Every food we cook well done. We cook our steak well done, so we don't have a problem. Now this chart, I want you guys to keep with you and pay attention to. It's a really good chart to put in your refrigerator or at home. It's where it gives you different points. Now look at the one that said danger zone. The temperature between 140 degrees F and 40 degrees F. That's where bacteria will grow the fastest, right? And so when you put your food on the countertop and you're storing them, it's normally at that temperature, and bacteria is growing to the point where even cooking might not destroy the load because you need time and temperature. And if you have too much bacteria, then cooking might not get all of it. Any question on that time zone? Because we had a lot of question about the cooking and storing food. So you see chilling foods and thawing foods, that's 40 degrees C or 40 F. And if you're gonna defrost your food, we say defrost it in the refrigerator. Don't defrost it under hot water. Not a good practice because again, it continues to spread food. If you're gonna hold your food for service, you have to hold it about 140 degrees 60, which is warm, right? Cooking is at 165. And then boiling, it's 100 degrees, which we do a lot of our food, we boil it. So at boiling temperatures, the bacteria will die. But remember we said the bot, they produce toxin like staph. Boiling will not destroy the toxin. So even though there's no bacteria and you boil it, if it stayed for a while and it produces toxin, it's not gonna die. Okay, keep going.
Question before you go forward. When you throw in fish or chicken in the freezer, does they require different temperature or they carry the same temperature?
When you freeze it?
Yeah, when you like when you have fish to To put in not just the fridge, not just the freezer, but the fridge also. When you take it
Yeah,
in.
it's the same temperature. Go back, Linnell. You keep it at the same refrigerator temperature.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We'll talk about chill right now. Keep going, Linnell. So reduce the temperature below 5 degrees, slows the production of microorganisms. Cold temperatures do not kill the bacteria. Remember I said listeria is the only organism that will grow. Most bacteria will not grow, but they won't die. They'll stay dormant. Next slide. And in your refrigerator, and when you could click the next one too, Linnell. When you go into the store or when you store your food, be very careful to store your raw food at the bottom of your refrigerator and then your fruits and vegetables on the top. So you see in the picture that says improper storage, in that bin where you have your vegetables, you have raw chicken and raw fish. Can anybody tell me why that is not a good practice? Why is that not a good practice?
Cross contamination.
Juice contamination.
Yeah, the juice from the chicken can sit down to your vegetables and you might not wash the vegetables properly because it's very hard to get rid of the bacteria and you eat it raw and then you have a problem. So store the foods properly. Also, when you go to the supermarket to grocery shop, buy your frozen food glass and then put them in a separate bag, separate from what's in your shelf. The reason why you buy glass, so you're not walking around the store with it and temperature abusing it. Yes, Maxine?
Hi, good evening. Question in regard to storing fruits. Is it recommended to store all fruits in the refrigerator separately, or is there like a rule to storing like separate each fruits? Because
So the question is, should you store them separately or keep them in the refrigerator? So I don't store my fruits in the refrigerator. I don't like cold fruits. I store them on the countertop, but I will wash them before I eat them. I actually have a little brush. Like if I buy like cantaloupe or other fruits that's on the outside, like mangoes,
right,
I will actually wash them in a little teaspoon of bleach.
Okay.
Because the watermelon and the cantaloupe on the surface, you can't get rid of the bacteria, or even on the lettuce.
Right.
I'll rinse them out in a little teaspoon of bleaching water. People think I'm nuts, but that helps get rid of the bacteria that's on the surface. On the watermelon or the cantaloupe, what happens is if you use a knife to cut it, what you are doing is you're taking the product from the surface into the vegetable part of where you're going to eat. So refrigeration is not required from a microbial standpoint.
Okay.
It's a preference, but then you have to wash it.
Okay. And what about the fruits being stored together? Is there a rule where you can't store mangoes and cantaloupe together on the same container?
It's not from a microbial reason. It's from, and I think it was Mishka who talked about it. It's more from a quality standpoint and the ripening quality and which ripes fast and what take the smell. So it's more of a quality issue, not a microbial issue.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Can I answer? Hello?
Yes.
When normally I work 8 hours a day, right? From 8 to 4. If I go at the fish market and I buy fish, I take to the office and I rinse them and I will season them and put them in the fridge in the office.
Yeah.
If I go and I buy chicken in the supermarket, when I go to the office, I am wrapping them with newspaper and envelope because I hate to see chicken liquid on anything for me. So when I buy fish, I always wash them in the office and just season and put them in the fridge one time.
That's exactly the practice you should do. Your chicken that you wrap up, because the juice is bad, but try to chill that down too.
Yeah, I hate, not on my stuff. I don't like it.
Yeah. It's disgusting to begin with, plus it can cause sickness. Okay. All right, great question, guys. I love those questions. Keep going, Linnell. Go to the next slide, Lynette. Let me see if we can pass this. All right, so go back. Can you play that one video? So what I'm gonna show you in that video, it's a quick summary of everything we touched about, but it's a little bit more detailed, a video on kitchen hygiene. I think, Lynette,
Is that the video I was going to play earlier?
Yes, that's the
During our session. Someone's mic.
Somebody was enjoying the fun.
You know, like that? Like that? Try something like the motion.
If you guys have any other question while Lanelle is pulling that up, and we can put it in the chat or we can talk about it. What does vinegar do to get rid of bacteria? Now, vinegar is not a sanitizer. I know we use a lot of vinegar. It will eliminate some bacteria, but it's not an actual sanitizer. It will prevent it from growing because it drops the pH, but it's not a recommended sanitizer, but it's better than nothing. All right, food safety in the kitchen. Keep going. On your plate, Lanelle. I do not own the rights to those videos, so please.
So one of the most important parts of what we do, especially in the kitchen, whether it's the kitchen at a hotel or your kitchen, is hand washing. So the FDA and most local health departments have guidelines. So first of all, you rinse your hands, you add soap, you scrub vigorously for 20 seconds, making sure you get in between the fingers, the nails, but scrubbing vigorously to create friction, and then rinsing properly. So when I teach hand washing, the one thing that I teach my team at the South Point and my students is to with your to recontaminate your hands, but to use the paper towel. So dealing with chicken. A lot of folks like to wash their chicken. I don't particularly wash my chicken, but here's one of the myths to chicken. When you wash your chicken, you are not washing off any of the germs or bacteria. That comes about, you kill bacteria by cooking this to 165 degrees for 15 seconds and using a properly calibrated thermometer to make sure that it's the right temperature. It's important to make sure that we wash the sink first of all. And keep in mind, as you're washing the sink, the surfaces that the chicken may have touched or you may have touched if you were not using gloves. So all the surfaces that the chicken touched, we want to wash with nice soapy water and a good soap. Then after you've washed the sink good with a nice soap, you want to use a sanitizer. You can use a spray sanitizer, or if you have Clorox at home, you can use Clorox, and then just let the sink dry naturally by itself. So other things to do in the kitchen, following Health Department and FDA guidelines, is washing of fruits and vegetables. Now, potatoes are one of the ones that I think you should not only wash, but you should actually scrub in the sink. And I'll show you why. So keep in mind, potatoes grow on the ground. So potatoes have dirt on them, and you cooking the potato does not always kill germs that might be on there. So it's important to not only wash them, but you want to scrub them, and that's why. Same with other vegetables that you may have in your garden or that you may use or buy from the store. I always use a scratch pad to try to remove as much of the outside germs. For instance, you have no idea who's handled these, if their hands were clean. So you want to make sure that whatever the vegetable is that you're using, onions included, that you wash the outer skin before you cut into them with your knife, because when you cut into a vegetable, an apple or orange, the contamination from the outside, you have now gotten on the surface on the inside, and if you're eating them raw, that's what makes you sick. So some of the other things that you can do at home for the different meats, you can have different color cutting boards. Chicken, of course, red meat, vegetables, and fish. But if you don't have these handy tools at home and you're just using a cutting board, so we're going to fabricate some chicken on the board. And the most important thing is what you do with the board afterwards. You are working with salmonella typically, but it's important that we wash, we rinse, and we sanitize our cutting board in between changing our task. And the same thing with our knife. So now that I've cleaned my board, I'll just cut some vegetables. So remembering that we've washed all our vegetables. So our chicken has now come out of the oven, and what's most important is taking a temperature. So with our calibrated thermometer, we're looking for the thickest part, which is typically the breast. So you want to stick it in there, make sure it comes to 165 degrees or better. But then you also want to look at other places, like the thigh. So you don't want to just stick it in one place. You want to stick it in a couple of places, just to make sure even temperature.
All right, then we can stop. All right, guys, so this was a summary of, quick summary of the kitchen. So what did you notice in that video? Anybody notice some things that he could have done differently? Anyone?
Hi, good
I
night.
think he could have.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I think he could have cut the vegetables first and then the chicken last.
Exactly. So
And
again,
the cloth that he used to wipe off the cutting board is the same
yes,
cloth he used to wash down the sink.
yes, yes. So I
I
think,
also think washing the vegetables with the sponge, I really don't. I think you
yeah,
could do
that's
something else.
probably not the right thing. You have to scrub it, but the sponge will take some of the germs, right? So I think when you guys watch cooking shows or you go to the restaurant, you find a lot of mistakes that the people do, especially in the cooking show. And the other thing, he wasn't wearing gloves, which he washed his hands a lot, but when he's gonna handle raw food, he should be wearing gloves.
Didn't have on a hairnet either.
He didn't have a hairnet, and he's a chef, right? So those are the things that he did some good things, but then again, he needs some training of what not to do. All right, Linnell, let's continue. We are at 7:02, and I think that was the last slide, Linnell. But let's do a quick thing on personal hygiene. And then you can put all the slides up. So for good personal hygiene is everything we talked about. You have to wash your hands regularly, especially after using the bathroom, shower and bathe at least once a day, clean clothes, do not prepare food when you're sick, and cover exposed cuts. We'll talk about that again. That's good at home, but it's also as important for your workers when you have your farm or your agro-processing plants. Okay?
I need to ask a question before you go further. You have covered any exposed cuts, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. When you cover your hand with a sticking plaster, and you have to, because I know I see a lot of people still go at work, stuff still leaves back on the sticking plaster, and sometimes the sticking plaster get dirty. Aren't there something that they could put on top of that? Like, you have those finger gloves to prevent.
So that's a very good point. So the plaster, the Band-Aid can be a hazard. And if you have workers that have a cut, you want to give them the Band-Aid and put them in to work on something that's not a direct contact with food, right? And then the gloves, you can put it on, but once you put the gloves on, be careful that you don't use the gloves as a protection for your hands and touch everything with it and don't change it. So the Band-Aid, you can either make them work in a place that's not food or put a covering on it. Good call on that. But you don't want the exposed cut in the food processing area. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Even at the a food outlet where there are people who do chicken and chips and they don't have a towel, they don't have a hairnet on, but they have a towel wiping the sweat every minute and then put the towel on their shoulder and using that same hand to touch the fire.
Yes, and yes. So I'm like a paranoid person. I don't eat out. If I eat, I just watch those things. There's such a thing as knowing too much, but you have to do that. And then we as persons that's in the food system, we have to make sure that we are doing better at that. The one thing you also will see, and it's not just in the Caribbean, it's everywhere. I go all over the place, and the one thing I will observe in factories is the improper use of gloves. So we use the gloves and we touch everything with the glove hand. As long as our hands is not touching, we'll touch the garbage can with the gloves, we'll touch the flour with the gloves, we'll touch the raw chicken, and we'll never change the gloves. So when we use gloves, it's very important to know how to use the gloves. Now, when they're making food and then they use the money, you get the money on the gloves, and then you put the money in the food and you go back and you take the bread or the chicken. So all of those things that we need to be aware of and call off and get people trained. So training is the only way we're gonna get that.
And even in the kitchen too, we tend to wear apron and forgetting sometimes there are towels whenever we wash our hands, whether we look in, we wipe it in our apron.
Yep. And if you go to a restaurant, watch those people, the chefs, they go inside with their clothes on and they come back and they just go right in the kitchen. So, all right, Lynette, let's keep going. I think there was a closing slide. We won't do the food safety jeopardy now because we'll do it first before we start next week, tomorrow. And Lynette, go to the next slide. Unless you guys want to stay and do it a few more minutes. So for tomorrow, we will do part 2, we'll do good agricultural practice, produce safety, organic farming, and we'll do some about certifications on your farm. So we'll learn about the food safety in the kitchen, and then we're gonna talk about translating it into the farm and some myths that we have to break.
Another question too. You're speaking about thermometers. Are there any one thermometer that could use for meat and cakes and those kind of stuff, or you use one for baking whenever you bake meat, and one for cake and those kind of stuff?
So they don't have a special one just for meat or just for cakes. What you have to do is if you are going to use one for chicken and one for food, that you have to clean and sanitize them in between.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
For example, sometimes someone might take maybe a leftover meal or out of the refrigerator and eat it cold. Because some stuff, you know, would that cause, like when it going through your body, would that cause the bacteria to wake up, anything inside your digestive system that will cause those bacteria that been dormant in the fridge to be activated?
So the answer to that is yes and no. If you put it in the fridge at the proper time where no bacteria was there growing, and if you eat it cold, remember it's already there, it's not gonna grow in your system because it's at a lower level and you're controlling it. If you let it stay out for it to grow and then produce the toxin, or to grow to a level that's high enough for it to make you sick.
Okay,
right?
thank you.
So you can eat it cold, it's not gonna be a problem. You don't have to reheat it. I eat cold pizza. But
Okay.
yeah. Any other questions? I have a few, I can say if you guys have some few more questions you want to ask that you didn't.
Can I say something? Hello?
Yeah.
I have learned something that I've never known for my 40 odd years on earth. When you said that there is no cure for food poisoning, my daughter was standing at the table and she said, but mommy, why do people go to the doctor when they get food poisoning? Then I said for them to give them liquid or drops, what do you call it? So she said, but mommy, you could stay home and drink liquid. So I've learned something that I never know, that there's no cure for food poisoning. So thank you. Thank you.
Because you get there, you get dehydrated, and again, you have to pass it through, you have to pass it out, you know? Yeah. It's really tricky. Well, ladies, I really enjoyed doing the intro. I know for some it might be basic, but some it's new, but food safety is something that we have to know, and then we have to do better in the Caribbean and the developing countries. And we have to create a food safety culture where we can make sure that our food is not making us sick and not making anybody else sick. Oh, before you go, Linnell, are you giving them the journals with the templates for tomorrow?
The templates?
Yeah.
I mean, they have the journals and I'll be sending the PowerPoints.
Okay, so ladies,
For
this is
them,
what I
yeah.
need from you. You have your journal for your food safety plan. I want you to take your homework for tonight is for you to fill in as many as you can. And we're gonna try to work on some of them as we go through the session tomorrow. It's 2 hours, it's gonna take a long time, but we'll try to take 1 or 2 people to go through it, okay? You guys all have the journal, right? If there's one that's in my food safety plan template, and then you had some what should be included in there. We'll go through some of that tomorrow. Okay? And I'm gonna have 2 people that's going to be ready to talk to me about inspection and learning what they did as an inspector that came to the restaurant and to find out, do an audit, right? Putting everything we learned together. Did I get 2 people? Anybody want to volunteer to do an audit of a restaurant to find out what they saw and what they could have done better? Just a reenactment. All right, so if then we don't have anybody to do the enactment, can somebody then do a summary of what we learned? Just the basic summary of what we learned yesterday? Can I get anybody to sign up for that, to just do a summary when we start? Do I have to pick somebody? Nobody? Roxanne? All right, I'll pick 2 people for me to do a summary.
I would say Anika Labod and Kellyanne Davis.
All right, so Kellyanne and who was the other one?
Lenika, I think that's the name.
Lenika, you've been voluntold to do a summary, a 5-minute summary tomorrow of what we went through for the 2 hours. Thank you. All right, ladies. Is it recommended to eat leftovers for 2 days? If it's properly refrigerated, you can keep it in there for 2 to 3 days before you eat it.
Another question. When you put food in the fridge, you have a tendency of saying when you're heating it up, you're supposed to heat it up as though when you're cooking it. Is that true?
Yes. You have to reheat it like you would bring it up to the 75 degrees, 74 to proper temperature. Yeah. Or in the microwave. I know we don't like the microwave, but the microwave, cook it in the microwave.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, ladies, I hope you had as much fun as I did, and I hope you guys learned something from this, and then I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for your participation. Really appreciated it. Linnell, thank you.
Most
welcome. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night. Good night,
We'll
everyone.
see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.